welcome to the Transformational Podcast, a conversation between brothers about practical ways faith is impacting our lives. We invite you to join us on this journey as we are learning to let faith transform the way we live. We are glad you are with us today and look forward to sharing our journey with you. Now let's jump in. Welcome to the Transformational Podcast. I've got the Dowdies here, missionaries that are, in a season of preparation. And they talked a little bit about at our church about their ministry this morning, 20 schemes. Super stoked to hear about it. Very excited to hear about what you guys are doing, what God's doing in your life. And I know that as you're listening right now, you've heard me bring at least another missionary on before. I typically do it when the Lord just puts it on my heart. He prompts me. And so I do pray that as you're listening, as all our friends are listening right now, that this would bless your life, and that the Father may actually teach you something through this, because that's the whole point of the podcast, is that you get to see people who live out their relationship, their walk with the Lord, and that hopefully that encourages you to do the same, whatever God's calling you to do. In this case, we talk about all the time, if I feel like hear God calling me to do something, I jump. I'm an all-in type person when it comes to that. I feel like God can change the direction if necessary. So before we get started, let's get to know you. I know you only from necessarily the church. We heard you this morning. One of my good friends, obviously, has hosted you guys. He's the deacon over missions. But how do you know Faith? Like, how did you get connected with Faith, which is our church, Faith Bible? Like, what was that connection there?
Yeah, we first met a family that currently goes to Faith almost 20 years ago in Yakima, Washington, the Campbell family.
Yeah.
When we were attending a Bible study together at the church up there. And both our family and their family eventually moved from Yakima. We went overseas for missions, and they moved east to Maryland. And we've kept in touch off and on, usually over social media these past couple of decades. And as we were preparing to move to Scotland and try to find some churches to partner with, Dave and Angela were very eager to get Faith on board. And so that was kind of the first steps.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I was excited to hear about it. I was excited to hear about your ministry there. Definitely was interesting listening to them reminisce, which 20 years ago, we talk about this sometimes, that Christ-centered relationships, Christ-centered friendships are just different. You run back into each other, and it's almost like you never left. Mm-hmm. And I kind of got to see that with you guys today.
Yeah.
That connection. I did forget to start off with your name. Sorry. So if you're listening or watching, I have Aaron and I have Faith. So there you go. Aaron and Faith, they're with us. Faith is as nervous as any of the ladies who've come on the podcast. Chris's wife has come on a few times, and she's always like, I don't want to talk, but it's part of it. It's fine. And so you had mentioned that you went off and did missions work in Kazakhstan. Mm-hmm. I know Kazakhstan's for other reasons, but how do you know Kazakhstan, and how did you get there?
Yeah.
Like, how did God get you there? What time of that, what period of life was that for you? Early 20s, right out of college, right out of high school? Like, where were you at?
We were more or less newlyweds, so mid 20s. When we got married, we both had an interest in missions. We kind of felt that tug by God to pursue that, and we're exploring other options, but Central Asia, Kazakhstan kind of opened up the door. That opportunity came right up, and so it was working with a minority people group that were kind of neglected, persecuted for their ethnicity and their faith, and so we went in to do some community development, working with farmers, helping them improve methods. Because in that part of the world, it was shortly after the Soviets kind of left, and so there was kind of a vacuum of expertise and skills and leadership. And so our group went in there to train them in better methods. There's 100-year-old, apple orchards, peach orchards that were being left alone to go wild, and trees were being cut down for firewood when it could have been used for livelihood and for income. And so our group went in there as Christians to do a good, legitimate business in raising up these farmers to take better care of their trees while also doing it as Christian businessmen and farmers and trainers, and also sharing our faith in what we did.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
What was your preparation for that? Just curious. Are you like a apple tree, peach
no,
tree expert? I mean, I
yeah,
have some peach trees and apple trees.
yeah,
Dying to get to take you around and you tell me what's up. No, but what
yeah.
was your preparation for that?
We moved to a farm in Texas before Central Asia was even on our radar.
Hang on. Everybody who's from Texas right now, that's right. We do have a Texan, at least one Texan in the house, even though she was born in Alaska. But like all Texans, as long as you claim Texas as your own, we claim you as our own. Glad you're on.
You probably claim it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, you went to Texas.
Yeah, I met Faith in Texas, and after we were married, we knew we wanted to move overseas. We knew we wanted to work in missions, and this farm that does a lot of kind of training on sustainable agriculture uh, seemed like a next best step because we knew in whatever part of the world we were going to live in, that was most likely a background we needed to have. And so we moved to this farm, and I managed a pecan orchard that they had.
Yeah.
Got a background in that.
Yeah.
Through that, heard about this organization that was working in Central Asia. And even though pecans and apples are very different, it gave me kind of a foundation. And then eventually moved to Yakima, Washington, where we met the family from Faith Bible, and worked on an actual apple orchard in Yakima to get better experience. And so
I love that.
So there was like 2 years, 2 years of training.
I love that the Lord called you in a direction, clearly called you in a direction, and He said, "Okay, I need tools for this. I need to be equipped, and not just like spiritually equipped. Mm-hmm. I need like other parts of this." And you went. I'm assuming you went and said, "Okay, I'm going to find out." Did you know you were headed to Kazakhstan at that point, or just know that when you were doing that, you were being intentional about where God was calling you and saying, "Okay, well, He's calling me here, and I'm going to need a tool." Like, how did that play out?
Yeah. So the first internship in Texas, we had no idea. We thought maybe Haiti or somewhere in Central South America. But the second time in Yakima, we had actually been in Kazakhstan already, and so we knew what the assignment was, and so that kind of gave us some direction. Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast, that you felt like the Lord was tugging you in that direction. When you say that He was tugging you in that direction, how did that play itself out? What was the tug? How did you? I don't know. We like to say, like, how did you hear it? Like, how did you know it was Him? You know, I have we talk about all the time, my thoughts. You heard me say it earlier. Mm-hmm. Like, if I feel like God's calling me in a direction, I just jump. Mm-hmm. And I assume that he's big enough that if my heart's in the right direction, He'll be like, almost, and he'll just move me over. Yeah. But like, what did that look like for you guys, just functionally?
Yeah.
Well, I think we both came to the conclusion that we wanted to serve the Lord with our lives, serve the poor, in some way, in some capacity, to show them the love of Christ individually before we met each other.
Okay, and that's awesome.
So mine came from I had a rough teenage years with divorce in my family and a negative stepfather and stuff, mm-hmm. And so I came to a point where I was angry at God, and I had to go through this season of like I was rejecting the suffering and the bad stuff.
Yeah.
But I also was not ready to follow Christ because I was angry at Him for allowing bad stuff to happen. And so I was on that teetering scale, and I went to a church and on a mission trip to the inner city Philadelphia. And the Lord used that experience to show me that if I try to go out in the world and do something good on my own, it will amount to nothing. There was the verse in John 15, apart from me, you can do nothing, is what convicted me that I needed to repent of my rebellion and anger and trust God if I really wanted my life to have any good purpose.
Yeah.
And so that was what brought me to repentance. And I chose to follow Christ at that point and started trying to work on obedience.
Yeah, One of the things I love about that, your story, and Chris and I, you'll at some point, they've never heard this podcast before. So I do love the fact that I've referenced the podcast, like they know what I'm talking about. But if you're a constant listener, you know what I'm talking about when I say that. One of the things that Faith just talked about, which I think is amazing, she made a conscious decision to not generationally follow her in her parents' footsteps. That she didn't have to do that, and that yes, the Lord took her through some points of time to say, hey, you're gonna need to be with me if you want to bear fruit. But more importantly, you made that call. You said, I had all that hard stuff in my life, and it was real, and it really did impact the way you saw the world. It impacted the way you saw God. I'm sure it impacted you the way you saw God as Father, and frankly, because I see that a lot. But I love the fact that you just said, no, I don't have to do that. I don't have to go down that way. And with Jesus, and I bet that's the most important part, with Jesus, that's not something I have to just be a victim to. I don't have to be a slave to that. So I love that aspect of your story. I think that's something that folks need to hear, that you don't have to, just because that happened to you in your life, it's not a predetermined path that you're going to end up wherever that takes you. And, Faith, you're a great example of that. So anyway, you have that moment where you say, okay, God, I'm all in on you. And was it, I always have this, and this is more of a curiosity question. Did you feel like your anger, because you said you had a little bit of anger with God or towards God, do you feel like it ended all at once? Or do you feel like over time, God just kind of kept saying, hey, let's deal with this now. Okay, now let's deal with this now. Or did he, one day you were like,
he's still dealing with me.
Okay, I'm just curious.
An entire lifelong process of sanctification, of surrender to Christ. I just took one step at a time of what was in front of me next. What, my environment, was it a place that would help me to grow closer to God, or would it pull me away from Him? And so I knew very little of good directions to go. And so the one little light that I saw, I went straight for it. So,
which was missions? How did you get there? Because that's a jump.
Yeah. The missionary in Philadelphia that was walking the streets ministering to heroin addicts. I just shadowed him. I did an internship. He graciously took me on as an intern when I was nowhere near prepared. But in that, he discipled me, and he helped me to see, to grow as a baby Christian. And then, but I had that, I saw his passion and love for broken people, and I wanted to follow that. So and then I moved away from home where I could learn how to be a Christian on my own, away from other influences. And then the Lord brought me back to Texas, and to finish school after a few years. Yeah. And then that's when I met him.
That's awesome.
But but by that point, I was standing on my own faith and determined that, I was going to follow Christ. I wanted to serve the poor and suffering, and that they may see and know Christ too.
Yeah. And you can do that. And it's funny, you talked about the fact you were doing that there in Philadelphia. So you can do it both nationally or, at home and abroad. You can do it around the community and abroad. In this case, God calls us to all these different places. And you guys ended up somehow getting called to Kazakhstan, which I'm familiar with, but for other reasons. It's a stopover point for military flights a lot of times. How did y'all get called to Kazakhstan? To me, I only heard about Kazakhstan for the first time when I talked to a buddy who was a foreign affairs officer, and I had to look it up on a map.
Yeah.
So how'd you get involved in one of the Stanians, as I jokingly say?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, we were originally interested in potential Haiti or Central America, and those doors seem to kind of be closing on us. They just those opportunities that we thought were going to be there didn't materialize. But I was at a missions conference that I attended, and I met this team that was working in Central Asia, and they told us about the project, and they heard about what we were doing on the farm that we were being trained at, and it seemed like a
this is
really
when you're in
natural
Texas at a pecan farm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's funny.
And so though we were didn't have experience in apples yet, but they had heard what we were learning and what we were interested in. It started to become more and more of a.
Was this a pecan farm in Waco? Was this when you were at Waco?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we chatted earlier. They have some Waco experience. I
Yeah.
told you guys I have some Mahia experience.
Yeah.
Also, though, I grew up in Nacogdoches.
Okay.
And so we had pecan trees, and my grandfather used to like literally individually on a twist turny thing crack pecans, shuck pecans.
Wow.
So pretty funny that you guys, I didn't know that about them until just now. That there's that connection.
Yeah.
How did you get called into missions ministry? What was your thing? You know, she said, "Hey, I'm not gonna walk my own path.
Yeah.
Father, I'm gonna follow you." And he said, "All right, follow me," and then eventually took you to Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Yeah. So I recently heard a pastor say, you know, when you're trying to discern God's will for your life, you know, if you're in Christ, if you are walking in obedience and you're enjoying Him, then do what you want to do. Right? If you're in Him, then your desires will be aligned with whatever He wants. And so just do what 100%. Do what you want if you're in Him, and then rest easy in that. Right? And then if you need to adjust, you adjust. But I just heard that recently, so I wish I had heard that originally 30 years ago. But as a young Christian, you know, I came to Christ as a 16-year-old in high school. Grew up in the church. You know, dad was a deacon. Parents taught youth Sunday school, and so was there 3 or 4 days a week. And so I had a desire to be in some type of ministry or missions, but really was clueless. Mm-hmm. And didn't have a whole lot of direction from mentors or anything like that. So just kind of as I went to college, just kind of doing what seemed like the next best thing, the next natural step. Kind of ventured out into things like youth ministry, Big Brothers, Big Sisters.
You just served wherever God was
and the next step, and so I mean I'm thankful because it's without that we wouldn't be here now. Yeah. But I definitely learned a lot that I wish I could have told 16, 17, 18-year-old Aaron before that. So it was more of just taking steps that would, you know, and I was talking to the youth at Faith today about, you know, find something where initially talk to your parents, talk to your elders at your church, and then find somewhere locally to get engaged.
Yeah.
That's the first steps you should be taking.
No, I agree. Yeah. Do you feel like, you know, we talk about this all the time, not just me and my brother, but me and other people, that idea that a lot of times God takes us and the willingness to serve is like His area where He wants to train or teach us. Did you ever have anything where you stepped into, and I think it's important for people here, like you stepped into and you served for a minute and you're like, oh, I'm probably not geared for that. And I'm going to give you my example and give you a chance to think about it because I'm interested, because I think sometimes people, one of their drawbacks from serving in the church or finding a place to plug in is they feel like it's a forever decision. And I think forever decisions those aren't normal. That's not a thing. I don't believe in that. And so one of the areas where I stepped in to serve once, and if you know me really well, then you'll know that this was a bad place for me to serve. I didn't realize it myself until I did. And it was in I think it was like the toddlers. Yeah, it was toddlers in church. And I served in the toddlers with my wife for about 6 months. And then one day we were leaving and she's like, yeah, you're not going back. And I'm like, what? She's like, nope. You're not allowed to serve there. And what I realized is that it was so stressful for me. I just physically couldn't stand. I mean, some toddler launches a Hot Wheel across the room. It's not my kid. And so I can't discipline the same way I want to. My wife, super loving, super caring. Oh, let's blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. Me, I'm just trying to not lose my mind. And she's like, you can't do that. And so then I was like, she's like, hey, you need to serve somewhere else. So then, then I found another place to serve in church. I just said, okay, well, I'm not going to serve there. I'm going to find some other place to connect. And then God used me in that way. Do you ever have that moment where you found yourself in a spot where you're like, maybe on better thoughts, maybe I should have never done that to begin with. Did you ever see yourself there?
I've got an answer, but to see if you have one first.
Well, mine would be, we run a mission center in Roanoke right now. And a long time ago, it was given to us by the Baptist churches, and we replanted it as a new nonprofit doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was there alone for a while, and I had to do all of the 501c3 paperwork and the administration and the talking to churches and getting support and all of that. And I learned that I am not an executive director. Never. And so that's why I hired him.
I like it.
And
No.
so we work together there now, and he does all those nasty things that I cannot do.
Yeah. What the Lord teach you about yourself in that time frame, and that you found like it was like an opportunity where you just kind of shaved an edge off?
Perseverance.
Yeah.
And that
right?
he's faithful. Like
Yes.
I spent years and years praying in that ministry that the Lord would do something good with it.
Yeah.
And now he's been there 5 years with me? 6?
Over 6. Yeah.
And it's grown so much, and there's so much good that's now being done, that I just praise God.
Yeah. So you got plugged in, you found a place, you plugged in. It was maybe not the most perfect or right place. You continued to seek the Lord in it, and no shocker, right? He showed up and he took care of you in that spot. I think people get really, they get up to the line of stepping up for the Lord, and then they back off because they think maybe he won't come through this time. It's like almost like a lack of trust. Yeah. What about you? Do you have some?
This probably sounds weird and it was also because this was a 7-year-long assignment, but I feel like Kazakhstan for us was kind of falls in that category. We got over there, and in some ways I thrived. I was out in the field every day, learning language, meeting our neighbors, and was just growing exponentially in that area. But faith was at home in that culture. Women essentially stay home.
Yeah.
They aren't able to get out as much. She had 3 children under the age of 4 or 5.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah. And so for her, like, she couldn't learn language. She had to be a tutor that come in once a week, but she wasn't out and about. And so she, in a way, kind of shriveled during that time and didn't thrive. And at the same time, we weren't able to get a work visa. And so we had to pull our oldest child out of the local school every 6 to 8 weeks, drive across the border to the neighboring country, find a guest house somewhere, reapply for a new visa, sit there and wait. And then invariably we would get denied and be given another tourist visa, drive back to our home, maybe a month later, try to get our child back into the school and try to pick up where we left off. And
that's crazy.
It was a time where, we kept doing that over and over again. And it drained us financially and it drained us with our energy, but also was like a major strain on our relationship. And eventually we said, okay, now it's time for us to put it into this chapter because it's hurting us.
Yeah.
But looking back,
it's no forever decisions.
I definitely
talk about that all the time.
Definitely not a forever decision, but God we've learned so much from that 7-year window of perseverance, of how to love my wife better. And so definitely I'm grateful that it happened. And it's also helped us in our current situation. As just an example, I mentioned we were always leaving the country, not knowing if we get approved for a work permit, not knowing if we'd even be allowed back into the country.
Right.
Always uprooted, always leaving our home, not knowing if it's the last time.
Yeah.
And then when we finally did come back to the States for good, or for good then, hopefully we're leaving soon. We started working at this nonprofit faith mission called Friendship House that started working with a lot of refugees. We have Roanoke is a large refugee resettlement agency in Roanoke.
Neat. Okay.
And so we started.
So you don't have to go overseas.
To
be overseas.
Yeah,
Isn't that crazy?
We started working with refugees who had to leave their home, not knowing if they'd ever see it again.
Yeah.
Not knowing if they'd be able to work in Roanoke again.
But you have a weird connection to that because so often you had to do something very similar, not to the extent.
Yeah, though we weren't being persecuted, though we weren't fleeing civil war or famine.
Like a concept of
there's an idea that we could relate to them a little bit. So even though that was a hard 7 years, we see that God used it for us to be able to relate to our new neighbors in Roanoke from places like Afghanistan, Syria.
That is really cool.
So,
that is amazing.
Yeah.
So the Lord taught you through that time frame, and then He took you to Kazakhstan, brought you back from Kazakhstan. How did you, so right now you're getting ready to go do 20 Screams. Let's just go to Scotland. I want to talk about that in a minute. But before we talk about that, because I just thought about it, I was like, let's talk about one other thing, because it's something that we talk about on this podcast all the time. which is our daily walk with the Lord, right? And I'm making a huge assumption, and I'm making a huge assumption because my brother and I, we joke about this all the time. When you run into somebody who loves Jesus, there is something about them just smells like Jesus, and you just know, right? And you guys smell like Jesus, so that's good. Maybe like Mexican food because we have Mexican food for lunch,
Yeah.
but Mexican food and Jesus, that's what you smell like right now. And so based on that, just curious, whoever wants to go first, it doesn't matter. What's y'all's daily walk look like? I will give you kind of an example of mine while you're thinking of the answer, right? I was telling somebody this in a sermon I preached about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, that I spend my first hour with the Lord and a cup of coffee, and then I'll go run, and then I'll go to work. And that's just my day. And someone was asking me once, they like, do you prepare for like your sermons, or if you're teaching youth, do you prepare for youth and during that time, or do you use that time to do that? And I was like, actually, I don't use that time for that, because for me, it's like hanging out with my friend. It's like hanging out. Like that's my time to be with him. And so I don't want to use it to do that. And so I just can't bring myself to. So that's kind of what my daily battle rhythm talk looks like. Our folks that listen to the Transformational podcast will know that. But I was just curious, what does y'all's look like? Mine's at the beginning of the day. I realize not everybody can do 5 a.m. That's just the time I get up because it's part of my life now. Just curious, what is y'all's like daily?
Yeah, mine's probably similar to yours.
Yeah.
As a father of 5 and managing a nonprofit, and then the job of trying to get ready for Scotland. If I don't get it done first thing in the morning, then there's a good chance it's going to get pushed back to just a brief window before I'm drifting off to sleep. So on an ideal day, I'm getting up between 5 and 5:30 to read through my reading plan. There's a plan called the McShane reading plan. Robert Murray McShane, Scottish pastor from 200 years ago.
I will put it up in the show notes. So that if you want to look it up, we'll get that afterward. I'll make sure it's in the show notes. If you want to listen or you want to read it, we'll have that on there.
He has a plan that you read through the New Testament twice in a year, and then the Old Testament once in a year. Also, the Psalms twice in a year. So, so there's basically 4 passages a day that I go through, and then spend some time praying for the family, for church, for Scotland. So that's kind of my first thing in the morning. If this time of year, I usually am not running, but I'm usually when it's maybe April to October, I'll go for a run when the sun's coming in a little bit earlier and it's not as cold.
I understand.
My kind of general rule is not below 40 degrees.
Okay.
And then there's always Christian books that I usually don't read those in the morning. It's if I'm sitting waiting for an appointment or in between the kids going down and going to bed.
And when you're reading through your daily reader, do you have, Chris and I, we talk about the idea that we go like, what do you want us to know? And then what do you want us to do? That's just the 2 basic questions. When you read your stuff in the morning, what's your general like method for reading through it? I know and based on what you just described, I know you're not just reading it, hitting the check mark and calling it a day.
Yeah. So, this is my journaling Bible here. So this is
nice. I've seen these. These are really
so
cool.
I just got this one a couple months ago because the other one got filled up. So
Nice.
I try to at least with one passage write down what the Lord's teaching me, or a prayer if a prayer for myself or for others in the margins here. And so that's kind of what I use.
What you're doing. If you can't see it, it's a Bible, and you don't have to show it, but it's a Bible that has the written word in the middle, and it's got notes,
some margins on the sides,
for writing. And my daughter just got one of those. She's super stoked about that. And we'll find a link to that. And make sure we have it up.
He was.
That's really cool. What about you, Faith?
I am on the other end of the spectrum. Completely spastic. And we have 5 kids, and I've worked and we've homeschooled on and off through all these last 20 years. So my time is extremely difficult for me to find a moment alone and quiet, much less like a consistent moment alone during the day. Yeah. So my walk with the Lord looks like praying throughout the day. And in our after school program, we have after school, a time where we share the Bible, have a Bible lesson with them.
Yeah.
So the preparation for that has been helpful for me through the years. But I would say I love to sit down with a book, with a journaling Bible, and mark it all up in different colors. I like go through it and look and have a different color for each thing. Like, the red is like warnings or, discipline actions that the Lord takes.
Yeah.
So, and then green are the blessings and the good things that the Lord gives you. And gold or yellow is something that's talking about the glory of God and so like doing that has helped me to like keep my mind on and really digest whatever I'm reading that day.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. I think a lot of times you have the perspective that, Aaron, he and I, we do that in the morning, but then there is a separate perspective, and it's important to acknowledge, you said you have 5 kids, you're doing the nonprofit, you're doing the rest of the stuff. And you mentioned you don't have a time alone, but you also mentioned, which I think is interesting, that you spend your time in prayer. And one of the things that's fascinating about prayer, it is our time alone, whether we know it or not, because it's the only thing that we can do without anyone else stopping us, interrupting us, or be present for it. It's literally us, between us and Jesus thing. And so I think it's important to take encouragement. I mean, not just you, but folks who are listening, if you find yourself in a season of chaos, and those are real seasons, right? Mine are all older now, and so that's helpful. But if you find yourself in a season of chaos, your time alone with the Lord may look like prayer. It may look like worship. It may take on a different form. What you described to me is a life that is focused on Him, whether it's focused on Him through raising kids and the rest. And, some of it's just daily grind stuff. And you said earlier, we're always being refined. God's always refining me. I need a lot of refining. So that's not a hard thing at all. Now, that's really cool. Okay, so let's talk about where you're going. You're going to go to 20 schemes. And so for folks who are listening, I'm going to try to describe it. This is what I do at work. I do this at work all the time. I say, I'm going to describe it, and then you're going to correct it. And I just want to describe what a scheme is. And so a scheme is like a projects or a row home or something like that kind of thing in Scotland. Specifically, they're going to Glasgow. So think north of Scotland, just prior to the Highlands. And in those schemes, and probably in some areas, we would see it as like that area of town, walkable area of town. In a city, it may be like the inner city, even like necked down to like 3 street kind of thing. And so a scheme there, that's literally, when they say a scheme, that's what we're talking about when we talk about Scotland. So when you hear 20 schemes, they're talking about 20 individual, we'll call it areas and maybe it's the Glasgow area. This is where you get to correct me, or Scotland area. But that's what a scheme is. 20 schemes is the thing you're participating, or I should say partnering with. And it's a part of a ministry to go and do what? So correct my schemes if I'm wrong.
Generally right. Yeah. And then there's hundreds of schemes throughout Scotland, and that the name 20 is, they had a name of either planting or revitalizing 20 churches and 20 schemes. And so I think they're out there at 17.
Okay.
And so
when they get to 21.
Yeah, that's like the common jokes. And what do? They up it to 15 schemes.
We joke about that on base all the time. Anybody who names anything next generation, always we laugh at. We make fun of them, because what happens when it's not the next generation? So so it's 20 schemes.
Yes,
got it.
So 20 schemes works to plant new churches or revitalize dying churches within the schemes of Scotland, as far north as Inverness, and then even above that, even above that, there's some islands, which is where our son is right now, and then they have 2 major hubs, one in Edinburgh and Glasgow. So in the further south, so they've got teams throughout all those areas working to, like I said, plant a new church in the scheme, or revitalize one that's dying. But
in Scotland, the area, and I know I'm leading the witness when I say this, but in Scotland, the area where some of the biggest names in Christendom came from. Yeah. So what do we?
you think of Scotland, you think of John Knox from the Reformation, you think of David Livingstone, Robert Murray McShane, the guy whose reading plan I use. He's Scottish. So some of the biggest names, Oswald Chambers, in Christendom are Scottish. But over the last couple hundred years, the Church of Scotland has been dwindling as it's been kind of as it's been kind of giving in to culture. And so what was once a rich Christian, well, there is still a rich Christian heritage, but you don't see it very much today. These beautiful old, 200, 300, 400-year-old churches are now, if they're still standing, some of them have burned down or have been torn down. They're being turned into museums, into pubs, into gymnasiums, into apartment buildings. As the church dwindles, as a whole, the country, they say about 5% would go to a gospel church. Within Glasgow, it drops to about 2%. And then within schemes, that number goes below 1%. So, within missions, kind of the missions mindset, they consider that like unreached people group.
You get all these people who like legitimately, they need hope, if nothing else. And they don't even have an opportunity. They don't have a place to get hope. And, we know that like a building is not the church, but you just mentioned that, okay, they have the buildings, but the buildings don't have humans, which that's fascinating. Well, what are the humans doing? Well, they're not following the Lord. So that's almost an unreached people group. And so it's interesting to hear about the progression there. Now, do you feel like the Lord is, has that people group like right on the edge of like just, I want to say blowing up with just his movement? Do you see an opportunity for his movement? Is his movement already kind of going, and you guys get to join on the front end? Like, where are we at?
Yeah, sounds like it. I mean, from the reports we hear from the other churches within 20 schemes that are either just starting or revitalizing, there's people that are craving what the gospel offers. And so we see that, our son who just moved up about 4 months ago to join a revitalization effort, that I think the church there had dropped about 8 members over the last year. Now they're up close to 30, which for, on the state side, that seems tiny, but the fact that it's like quadrupled in size, in a year is encouraging. And so from the reports that we've heard is that it's, the ground is kind of ripe for it.
I say that when light is in the darkness, and we're talking real darkness, the light is just that much brighter. And so 8 people to 30 people, 30 people, if you just, it's 30 people, probably most people will be like, how big is the town? Because there's some folks in Texas who like 30's a lot. You know what I mean? There's some folks in the city where they're like 30's like a luncheon. And but 8 to 30, but 30 people on fire for the Lord in a dark spot, man. I tell you, that will rock. That will rock the city.
And when you see, especially when the identity of a scheme, where schemes generally are kind of generationally poor people who are born and live and die within that scheme, and they're dealing with things like joblessness, drug and alcohol abuse, fathers that leave their families abandoned, domestic violence. And so for people who are coming out of that, and they come out of that lifestyle, they start looking for work, they start to reunite with their families, they cling to Christ. Then it's beautiful to see.
Because God's way is better. That's the thing we talk about. When you follow him, all of a sudden like things kind of like they improve. We talk about that.
All the social improvement projects are nothing compared to a changed heart with Christ, because that changes everything from the inside out.
Yeah. I bet you see that in your current Roanoke thing, when you see folks who like all of a sudden like align their life to the Lord, and it may be not going to make them the next Elon Musk, and sort of being facetious, right? But there is a change there, right? I mean, I'm sure you see the change in the folks who all of a sudden they come in one day, they're maybe navel gazing, maybe just looking at themselves, and the next they get their eyes on Christ. And maybe I don't know how that plays out, but
I think that does happen. It can happen, but in general, this is a long, hard work, and it's a relational. Evangelism is a lifetime work, and we don't get to see the fruit as much as we would love to, but we trust the Lord. We are planting seeds, we are watering, and we are trusting the Lord that He is going to use this for for his
Now
kingdom.
this podcast is going to drop after the podcast that I recorded yesterday, and we talk about that. Actually, we talk about the fact that Joseph, right? He went and was in jail for 2 years after the cupbearer said, "Don't worry, I'll get you out."
Yeah.
That must have been a long 2 years, and that was 11 years after being sold into slavery. 11 years after being sold into slavery, having no idea except for a dream that said, "Hey, you're supposed to, your family's going to bow down to you." No idea that how God was going to use him, to only then later on find out how that is. And I talk about this all the time. It may not be second in Egypt. That's may not be the point. The eternal significance of what we do, a lot of times can't be seen in this lifetime. It can't be seen on this side of heaven. And so I do think it's fascinating. You talk about it. It's a long work. It is. It has some longevity. It requires just intentional living. So, okay. So you're getting ready to go to Glasgow. Is that next summer? Like, where are we at in the process?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do the thing that you wouldn't do, but I'm going to do anyway. I do this with my brother all the time because my brother's, I'm like, I'm going to speak on your behalf, Chris. And then we talk about giving. And so, but you probably won't, but I'm going to do that part.
Okay.
Where are you at in the process?
Yeah, so we are in the process of support raising, trying to find kind of regular partners who will, churches, individuals, families who will just kind of join us in this journey. And we're at about 40% right now. And the prayer, the hope is that we will get to 100% by this summer 2026, because we're in the process of transitioning the Friendship House, the nonprofit that we manage, to new leadership. And we're ready because
God's called you and you're
to hand it off. And so if not making it to the summer and having to wait like another year in this state of kind of limbo would that would be hard.
Less than ideal.
Yeah, less than ideal. Yeah. And so we would like to hand it off well and then make the move over to Scotland this summer if God makes a way.
So if the Lord is prompting somebody to support you guys financially, is there? I'll put a link on our show notes. Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, on the 20 Schemes website, 20schemes.com. That's the number 2, the number 0 schemes. SCHEMES for those who write in crayon. That's me. But 20 schemes. Yeah, 20schemes.com, and there's a section for giving, and once you get to that page, there's a drop down menu with our names.
Okay.
Aaron and Faith Dowdy. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And you guys are going to go over there. You're going to live there full time. And is it? What does that look like? It's full time ministry. Is it a ministry mix? I know we talked about this a little bit. You get involved in the community, but what does it look like functionally? Or I should say, maybe it's logistically and functionally. I don't know.
Yeah.
You go with it. How about that?
Yeah. So the plan is to get over there and eventually, find housing, find a place right in the middle of the scheme. We're moving to a scheme called Govan, Govan. Move right in, be a part of the scheme, be part of the community. And like we mentioned, we'll try to plug into things that are already happening. We have a family full of soccer players. I'm a soccer coach, and so we'll try to
Yes,
integrate
that's right, Chris, he plays soccer. He doesn't play football.
Yeah. So try to get integrated in something like that. We're excited about the prospect because we'll have at least 3 kids in school when we're there. So being able to connect with families in the community. We have a teammate over there already. It's husband and wife, the empty nesters, who are they're already making connections in kind of different walks of life that we wouldn't be seeing as much. And so we feel like once we get there, we'll both have kind of feelers out in 2 parts of the community. And
it's almost like with that setup, you'll have the empty nesters I know he's doing Bible studies and discipleship and mentorship. And then you'll have your connection to regular, what I call the crazy part of life, like we talked about earlier, families. And that, that in it of itself, we can see that coming together as a church pretty easily. Yeah. It seems like that would be a natural outcome of that, right?
Yeah, and then hopefully raising up more teammates from the U.S. and the UK who would be willing to move into Govan with us to be part of that core team.
That's right. You guys take internships or even missionary visits or whatever the case may be. If you're interested in that, obviously hit me up in email, 20schemes.com. We'll have it as well. We'll have some of that in the show notes. I did a lot of short-term mission trips when I was coming through high school. I feel like it is a huge growth opportunity. And all the way through actually college, I did both. And it's a growth opportunity for your faith. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about your God, because he'll teach you some things. So I know that that's an opportunity to support y'all as well. Anything else before we get off? Call it good.
The first good chunk of time that we're going to be there, we're going to be trained by another church that is right in the scheme right next door, called Harper Memorial Church. And they've been preparing and praying for a church to be planted in Govan for a long time. So we won't be going in there like we have all the answers. We are going to go in there to learn ourselves, and we'll be taking seminary classes through the 20 schemes. So we will be in training for the first few years as we are establishing life there.
And it's fascinating. I think I'm used to it, so I'm gonna say something that you're saying out loud that most people don't. I guess you could say pull together, which is a lot of times our overseas missionaries. If you're not paying attention or you just don't know because nobody's ever told you, part of the first 2 or 3 years is simply creating a community or getting into the community that they're serving with. And so I fully expect the first year or two, you guys, that's where you're going to find yourself kind of being into the community. God's going to use a lot of weird things, really cool things to connect you guys. And then you're right. I think the Lord, after all of that, then you take into the next step is, okay, how are we now? What is the intentionality? Almost like, I don't know, learning how to do pecans and apples, right? Before you go to Kazakhstan. But in this case, you get to do that live. Well, we'll pray for you while there. And then hopefully if this, again, I don't know how God uses this podcast a lot of times. It may be nothing, but I did enjoy that opportunity to talk to you about what God's doing in your life, because we have a lot of folks who listen. And I know they listen because they talk to me and they say, things like, it's good to hear how God's working in other people's lives. And what does that look like? What does that sound like? What's it smell like? So that they can see it in their own life. And it's been really encouraging for me to talk to you guys. I'm going to pray us out on live, which I don't normally do. So we're going to pray you out, and then we'll call it a podcast. I greatly appreciate y'all joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Father,
we thank you for the Dowdies. I just pray that you would be their provider, Lord, that you would bring them the support they need to go do the work that you've called them to do in Glasgow. Pray that you would already be preparing the hearts, minds, souls in the area that they're going to be working at in Govan. That, Father, you would go before them, that while they're doing their training and they're just kind of getting to know the community, you give them opportunities to share your love, to spread your light, Lord. It's just when light is a present and folks who need hope, who need you, it just is so obvious. And we pray that you would give them the bold faith that they need, and the preparation, the protection, and all of the things for their family as they look to transition into serving you in Glasgow. We thank you for their faith and their willingness to share, even though maybe totally not planned for them, but appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to him. And we pray all these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you for taking time to join us today. Our prayer is that you are encouraged in your own journey as you let faith transform the way you live. If you enjoyed hanging with us today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star review and sharing our podcast with others. We look forward to discussing what God is doing in our lives in our next episode.